So what is the military allowed to say no to if the president were to, for example, deploy them against the civilian population? This is not going to be great news because not a lot. And the Pentagon is actually already running preparation drills on this. Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to respond if he does XYZ? So, first of all, in the military, enlisted swear allegiance to the officers appointed above them, the U.S. Constitution, and the officers appointed above them. Officers, people like me, I was a captain in the U.S. Army, swear allegiance only to the Constitution, right? And they make us like write essays about this and stuff when we commission to make sure that we understand that you are supposed to, in fact, disregard unlawful orders. And deploying the military against Americans, in theory, is an unlawful order. There's something called posse comitatus, which says that you cannot deploy the military against Americans, except in times of emergency, right? So it would, in my opinion, be fairly easy to deploy citizens against American citizens. You just have to declare it a time of emergency. Now, those individual members of the military would also have to consent. So there will be people's morals, but unless people do it in a large enough number, unless people walk away in a large enough number, that's not really going to help much. The military is used to much stricter rules of engagement in war than the police are in America against American citizens. So I do think there would be some pushback, but it's going to be, I find it to be very ironically upsetting that because we believe in democracy, we have to hand over the country to someone who wants to try to destroy it. And we all know that. Again, the Pentagon is practicing drills for what they are going to do when crazy orders come down. I do always like to tell people that this concept that the president is sitting on a desk and just like has a button that he can press a nuke, that's not how it works. There are 4 people in between the president's decision to launch a nuke and a nuke launching. That the reason that there is a full bird colonel who's like holding the football is because that person is supposed to know all of the fine nuances of this and is supposed to like unalive in place before letting the president do something completely bonkers like this. However, like, all bets are off with Donald Trump. Cult leaders are unpredictable. That's part of it. I'm Danielle, a scholar of cults, extreme groups, and extremely bad leadership, and I wrote a book called Uncultured about growing up in the Children of God religious cult and going into the cult of the U.S. Army. You can get signed copies here. And while I have you all, I'm just going to answer this one question when people are like, why don't the police shoot to wound instead of shoot to unalive? And the answer to that is because that is illegal. That is against the Geneva Conventions because it is considered torture. So I want to put everybody's fears a little bit at rest here that Trump's just going to get rid of all the generals and the upper brass. This is where bureaucracy for the win. It's not that easy to get rid of people in the military. I'm Danielle, a scholar of cults, extreme groups, and extremely bad leadership, former Captain Mestenek in the U.S. Army. I wrote a book called Uncultured about growing up in the Children of God religious cult before going into the cult of the U.S. Army. And one of the things I talk about all the time is that it is harder to get out of the U.S. Army than it is to leave most other cults. And this is actually something that slowed the Yahtzees down as well. When there is paperwork, when you have a paper trail, you can't do whatever you want. Obviously, you can do a lot of damage. Obviously, I expect him to do a lot of damage. I just want people to know it's not as easy as getting in office and being like, all generals who aren't loyal to me are fired. Not to mention that would be the kind of thing that you could remove an American president for. Not that anybody has or will stand up to Donald Trump, but it takes time and it takes paperwork and it takes reasons to kick people out of the military. So yes, it can happen. It's not going to be a day one kind of a thing. This leads me to an interesting conversation that I had with my first boss in the Army. And he said to me, Daniela, 40% of people join the Army because of patriotism. 50% of people join the army because they want to pay for college and the benefits, the social elevator. He said, and 10% of people join the army because they're schmurderers and they want to unalive people. And it's our job as officers to find those people and get them out. Except I don't think we do a very good job finding them and get them out. I think violent, angry men who like schmurdering are what the army selects for, as I explore in my next book on American, my video book, which you can find on my Patreon. I'm Danielle, a scholar of cults, extreme groups, and extremely bad leadership, former Captain Mestenek in the U.S. Army, and I wrote a book called Uncultured about growing up in the Children of God and then going into the cult of the U.S. Army, where I'm not sure people will disregard Trump's orders. You can get this one is actually humorous. The vax or get out in the military was a test of who would bow down. No, the vax or get out was a test of who would put themselves first. And many, many people proved that they would. And the military had to back down because that many people would follow Donald Trump and put themselves first, even though they're members of the military trained not to do that.